I'm going to give this presentation the way that I wrote it, and we can stop at any time and because it's the three of us and talk about other things. But I did want to just say welcome and thanks, Doug, for coming. So for me, if you're in a room like this talking about how to communicate better, then you've got a lot of other things already figured out. So congratulations. I wanted to, now you guys know who I am, but Doug, you know about Hawkeye. I'm in a partnership with Hawkeye. So I sometimes go by Jackie Tenderwolf. My real name is Jackie Young. Hawkeye works at Lullabot as a senior web developer, but you may know that I'm an auctioneer with Bullseye Auctions. That's what I've been doing for the past 15 years. I'm an appraiser. That's how I make my living personally. But recently, about maybe a year ago, I started talking about ways to become more mobile and be able to work remotely. And so I started taking classes, and now I'm taking Drupal Easy. So hopefully I'll be able to work as a web developer in 2020. So for the purposes of this talk, which is about communicating better, effectively, dealing with your emotions when you're communicating specifically, I'm drawing on experiences primarily from two places. One is my experience in community, and this is a picture of the Atlanta Moore community as my daughter when she was 3 or 4. The helpful arrow points to the lady in the lava, that's me. And this was all of us getting ready to present or facilitate a course on topics like communication and relationships. So that's what we did together as a group to make our living, to make money together, is that we facilitated courses. We contracted with this group, Lafayette Morehouse, to send us teachers who would teach on these topics specifically. So for about 5 years, I took a course every month on communicating, various forms of communication. And then Hawkeye and I, when we met and I left the community, we did a year-long course in London to train to be therapists in this type of therapy. So we're both certified therapists, but we cannot practice here in the States, except for in California. So that's the way it is. Now, the therapy that we were studying blended Eastern philosophy, Eastern ideas, especially from Taoism, into a Western therapeutic model. So that's what we were studying. It's fascinating, and I hope maybe someday I'll be able to practice. And the other pictures of my dog, that's Chief, and my flower garden are evidence that I have a flower garden. The Hawkeye and I live in a group now where we have 6 roommates, and we have a big house in Chattanooga, and like that. So what I'm going to talk about today are just a few ideas. As you can imagine that there's a lot of information covered over those years and a lot of tips and tricks and techniques and things that we got to practice. But I just wanted to get a few things across today that I think are very helpful. And I wanted to break it down right away. Like, what if you just left and you want to go right now and listen to another talk, a presentation? This is something to leave with, which is that if you want to communicate effectively when emotions are running high, you will pay attention to both. You will maintain what we call a dual level of awareness, that you're concerned about the thoughts and you're concerned about the feelings, and you're paying attention, keeping them in your mind simultaneously. Yeah, so this is my disclaimer. I have been known to lose my temper. It is true. I'm not. These are all techniques and things that I've learned that are helpful to me. I have grown, but I have been known to lose my temper, even to this day. So, what is a hot topic conversation? There could be a big question mark right here. Specifically, we use these words in my community. So this is community vocabulary. When we wanted to talk about something that somebody felt strongly about, and usually we would come together as a small group to talk about that. So it was a deliberate conversation, meaning we scheduled it. You would go to someone and say, hey, something's on my mind. I would like to have a hot topic conversation with you at this time and this place. Are you available? Are you interested? So what's interesting about doing a deliberate form of communication, we would say hot topic conversation because that was our vernacular, is that everyone can come with their best selves. You can prepare, right? So you can come already knowing I want to address these ideas, these thoughts I'm having, but I also have strong feelings, and I want everyone in the room to know I have strong feelings, so we can account for them. Now, one of the things coming out of the community 5 years ago or so, after being in it for 20 years, is that I have a whole vocabulary that belongs to them and belongs to that experience. So I think today, if I were out in the wild like I am now, I might just say, hey, I feel strongly about something, can we have a conversation? And then when they go to say, let's just talk about it, say, no, I don't mind waiting. Well, how do we do it? Do you have time to sit down and have a deliberate meeting? So the first part is actually the ideas. And what's important about going into a hot topic conversation is that you're goal-oriented. You have something you want. You want to change or improve something. Rather than you want to complain about something or have a gripe session, or you're upset and you want everyone to know, or you want emotional release and get it all out there. I have no problem actually in a therapeutic session, especially with emotional release. It's kind of fun. And gripe sessions, I think, can be very bonding between people. So I don't have anything against them either, but not in the context of a hot topic conversation. There's really no room for bitching or emotional release. Really, it's a place for safety and a goal. You have something you want. And you want it badly enough to be deliberate about it, about getting it. So here it is again, where we're talking about ideas and feelings. So a hot topic conversation means that you have strong feelings about it. So when you ask for this kind of conversation, everyone knows that you feel strongly. So when you come in the room, you've had time to consider how you're going to handle your feelings, and the other people have had the same. So they know what they want, and they know how they feel before you sit down. All right, hot topic conversation. So this is really important, and it helps me remember sometimes, like when I have lost my temper, for example, my humanity. I'm going to talk very briefly and simplest terms possible about our brain makeup. It's kind of a complex and fascinating topic, our brain makeup, but like I said, we're going to simplify it. So we're going to call one part of the brain the primitives, and the other part of the brain the ambassadors. So our ambassadors of peace. Does anybody have any questions so far? Either of you guys? Okay. So our primitives are back in here. They're close to the brainstem. And they scan for danger. So they're always looking for ways you could survive or get hurt. If they feel threatened, then they flood your brain with chemicals. Your brain, other parts of your brain signal to glands in your body to flood your body with chemicals. Your muscles get shot tons of energy. Your digestion slows to a crawl. Your heart rate becomes very efficient. Your breath gets short. And all this because of the primitive part of your brain. So you've heard of all of us have heard of fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what's happening. Generally speaking, when you're having a conversation, you don't need to do any of those three things. They're not effective, but we get triggered. And so we think we're in that situation. We think we're in danger, mortal danger. We need to fight. We clearly need to fight. We either need to fight or stop talking and run away or Freeze. So luckily, we have a more highly evolved part of the brain up front, which are our ambassadors. They help us remember. So what do they, ambassadors, what they do is they give us awareness. They remember our recent past, and they collect, if they have a lot of information stored about things that happened in the way past, so that they can interpret the signal differently than we have to fight. We have parts of our body that give us bodily awareness, so we can be conscious and aware of the sensations in our body and the feelings we're having. Part of our brain picks up on nonverbal cues, makes us feel more empathic, and parts of our brain can interpret high-level and complex ideas, words. We have cognitive ability in our ambassador section. And right up front, right up here, we have a moral and empathic center that communicates with both the primitives and the ambassadors, keeping it, hopefully, making the right decisions, helping us make the right decisions for the moment. Bottom line of this discussion is that we don't want our lizard brains taking over in a hot topic conversation. This old part, this very early evolved part that strikes first and asks questions later, that part of your brain which will enable you to say the smartest things that you will regret for a long time. That part of our brain we would like to chill out and engage, keep our social engagement system, our ambassadors online. So where does this start? It starts with self-care. I actually have a kind of a elaborate ritual of self-care, especially when I'm feeling low. But I liked what she had to say. She said the ideal first step before you go to train someone or you go to have a hot topic conversation is to self-reflect. How am I feeling? What is my state of mind right now? Am I calm, loving, and accepting? Or am I angry, frustrated, and critical? Right? So you've checked in. How am I feeling? I feel pretty good. I can have this conversation. Or I am not right. Things are not good. And then you know you need more self-care. I actually can't overemphasize how much self-care helps in keeping your communication soft. So I like this picture because I have this idea that we're all very similar kind of robots, but we have different ways of presenting. So we're like similar beings, but with different clown suits on. My self-care routine includes meditation, spiritual readings, moving meditation like yoga, but I count walking my dog these days as part of that. And a certain amount of attention on eating well, sleeping enough, having enough laughter in my life. If I lose my sense of humor, the conversation's not going to go well, what I noticed. And every person has a different self-care routine. And so I ask at this point to think about that. Like, what is it that you need to do to really care for you so that you are the best version of yourself? In fact, what I've found is that if I look back at times when I've lost my temper, almost always there's a lapse in self-care. How are things going?
Very nice. I really needed this. This is perfect.
Awesome. So now we're going to talk about the training cycle. Evolved, version 2.0. I've heard a lot of people misuse training cycles. And so I want to talk about how we use them in our community and how I use them now, and talk about how effective they are, actually. So a training cycle is like a micro hot topic conversation. It's the same idea, except in very small form. And again, when you're using a training cycle, you're thinking about thoughts, and feelings. The first part of the training cycle is approval. Sometimes this is the hardest part, because if you're upset with someone or you don't like how things are going, to start with approval can be a challenge. So sometimes this is the hardest part. This is your reflective mind. You have to remember what you like about the person, what you appreciate. You have to embody that, so you feel that way as well. In fact, if you're not feeling a way and you just sort of manufacture an approval, it can feel very false and disingenuous. So this has to be a genuine idea of what you're approving about the person in front of you or about the situation you're in.
I'm feeling like a horrible human being. When I first saw the approval, I thought we were talking about my approval.
Approval of yourself?
Yeah, but then a few sentences in, I'm like, oh, I must approve the other person.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an earth-shattering smile.
Well, it helps to, I find if I'm approval of myself, it makes it a lot easier to approve of the person I'm talking to. That's probably what the self-care is that when you've taken care of yourself, you feel valuable to yourself, and you can extend that courtesy to someone else. So, a training cycle, being trained feels good, and approval feels good, and acknowledgement feels good. Most of us are short on acknowledgement, especially men. Tend to walk around short of acknowledgement. That might be a chargy thing to say in today's gender world, but it's something I've experienced, is that men work pretty hard and do a lot of stuff and without much in the way of thank you or that's great. So to begin a training cycle, you start with approval of the person you are talking to. You feel approval. If you don't feel approval, it will be picked up on. People will know. In fact, usually the words are late in a communication cycle. I mean, you've already conveyed how you're feeling about things before you speak. So you've already said, hey, I want to talk to you about something I feel strongly about, so they know that going in. And then you have to let them know that you appreciate them. I want to know that I value your contribution. Some form of that. I respect your hard work. I respect everything that you've done so far. And here's the part that is also, this part's also challenging. It's asking for what you want. And of course, it's predicated on knowing what you want. Rather than this is what I don't want, you have to know what you want. You're asking for something reasonable, a small change or a small improvement or manageable, at least accomplishable goal that the other person can give you. So if you ask for something too large, you can cause frustration in the person you're asking. And if you ask for something too small, usually you're watering down what you want. So the goal is to find the sweet spot. You're asking for something manageable and accomplishable. That's what you really want. And then the final part to close the training cycle is acknowledgement. The moment that the person you're talking to moves in your direction, you say thank you. Even if they're like, hey, I don't know. You have room there. There's room there to say, well, thank you for hearing me and thank you for considering it, right? But some form of acknowledgement to close the cycle. It's some form of thank you. And again, the acknowledgement has to be genuine. It can't be like, oh, well, thanks a lot. That will not fly. I can tell you that using training cycles at first can be awkward. It can feel like false. So, it can feel very awkward, like you're manufacturing a communication or using a technique to communicate with. But when you practice with them, when you use them all the time and they become second nature, most people don't even know you're using them. And if you do get caught using it, I can tell you with Hawkeye and I use training cycles all the time with each other, and we don't notice. But if we do notice, I can at least go, oh, well, that's kind of nice. He's using the training cycle. He botched that training cycle, but at least he tried. Right. And like I said, and if you get natural at it, you forget you're using them. They just become a habituated form of communication. And this comes to this point, is that when people feel safe, when the environment is safe, you can say anything. You can say the most scathing criticism if it's done in a respectful environment. If people feel safe, you can talk about anything. So the training cycle is a microcosm of the hot topic conversation. We said that before. If you are in charge of keeping it safe, so it's your hot topic conversation and you want to make sure you have a goal in mind, you want things to change and improve, then you're in charge of keeping the environment safe. And how do you do that? The most challenging part is when the other person goes on attack at you, what could be perceived as an attack. And that can be through silence, or it can be through a mean and cutting thing, it could be through sarcasm, whatever it is that you feel like it's sarcastic or that's coming at you, it feels like an attack, you have to stay reasonable enough to say, oh, that's not personal. That is them not feeling safe. So instead of asking, how can I get them back for that horrible thing they just said, you think, how can I make this a safer place to talk? So all of these things are about slowing the conversation down. And you have to know, I think we talked a little bit before, is that when someone gets triggered, your body's not flooded with chemicals. The primitive mind can take over. There's like levels. I think we've all experienced the levels of just being a little triggered and then being like, I am gonna, and then full on in it and there's no coming back, right? Well, once those chemicals get all triggered through your body, it takes a minute for them to flush and not to. Now emotions, they can come, they can go, but if that whole fight or flight lizard brain activation happens, it takes a minute for things to calm down again. So here's sort of the model based. It's very much like the training cycle, but this is for a whole conversation. In the middle is the what do I really want? What am I trying to achieve? What do I want to improve or change? What's the positive thing I want to come from this meeting? And then there's safe space and gratitude, forming the safe space around the whole thing. Hello. Hi. Welcome. So,
Sorry, I was trying to get in.
oh no. Well, welcome. So we're right now talking about, we're actually at this point where we're talking about the actual hot topic. You find yourself in a room, you've made a deliberate meeting with someone, you want to talk about something that you feel strongly about, and you really have something you want to achieve. You want something you want to improve or change, and you're keeping that forefront in your mind. And so now you're sandwiching that and keeping an environment that's safe. Here, go back one. If it's safe, you can talk about anything. So how do you keep your ambassadors working? How do you keep your social engagement system online? Honestly, you give it a complex thought. If your brain has a complex goal, by default, your higher brain functioning stays online. And that complex goal can be as simple as, how do I get what I want and maintain this relationship or build this relationship and improve on it? How can I let this person know that I respect and care about them, that I want this to be a safe place to talk, and still talk without watering it down about exactly what I want? So that helps you maintain that two levels of awareness. By giving your brain that complex goal, you're saying, I want to have a conversation that values feelings and ideas. Both are important in this room. In addition, to win, we all like to win at a hot topic conversation, you go in with two levels of awareness. One is that I would like my ideas heard. I'd like them to gain traction, and I would like us to improve or change this thing. And on the second, I am willing to have my mind changed. I'm willing to consider the other person's viewpoints, reach a new understanding, different from what I've invented. And the goal of the conversation then becomes to add to a common pool of meaning. That term, adding to a common pool of meaning as being the ultimate goal of a hot topic conversation, is something I didn't invent. That comes from a book called Crucial Conversations. And I borrowed a technique from them, from the hot topic from Crucial Conversations, called stepping in and stepping out. So stepping in is when you're talking about the ideas. And then all of a sudden, you find that you have a reaction in the room. People are angry or upset or exhibiting some of those behaviors that feel like an attack. And again, we had talked earlier about that. You go, oh, they don't feel safe. Not they are attacking me and so I'm going to hurt them, but oh, they don't feel safe. And you step back out of the conversation. Now we're no longer talking about ideas, and we're instead focusing on getting back to safety. Here's one technique that may help with that, and I use this all the time in conversations, and that is just repeating back what you heard. So you say, hey, this is what I just heard. Let me repeat what I just heard. And you repeat it the best of your ability, and they have a chance to correct it if it's not right, or say thank you for listening to me. Both of these techniques, stepping in, stepping out, and repeating back what you heard, have the effect of slowing the conversation down and returning to safety. So if you've had a trigger reaction where your body's not flushed with chemicals, both of these techniques give a moment for all that to settle back down. I will tell you that in my community, we never had a hot topic conversation without a mediator. A mediator's whole job is to keep their attention not on the ideas in the room, but the atmosphere. I have found in my relationship with Hawkeye that if both of us are in our sane minds, we're both reasonable, we have the best conversations. But if one of us has gone crazy and is angry and we're upset about things, then as long as the other one is okay, we can still have a pretty reasonable time. We can get to a good place. Now, if both of us go offline and both of our primitives, and it's just all out war, it's mayhem and chaos. So somebody's got to stay sane in the room, and sometimes that has to be a mediator.
That's when you take a drive.
Yeah.
Go for a walk.
For a while. Step away, really. Step away. And again, it's really science. It's that you feel threatened at a survival level, and now you are fighting for survival. You've misinterpreted the signals, or your brain has, let's say. Your primitive mind has misinterpreted the signals. Now your body's flooded with chemicals. You're really out of control. All right, so this is basically the end of Hot Topic Conversations. What we talked about today, I'll just go over it again, is that to successfully communicate when emotions are running high, maintain a dual level of awareness. So you pay attention to both the feelings and the ideas in the room. They give equal weight, maybe more to feelings, maybe. We talked about creating safety in small communications and also large ones. And we talked about a couple of techniques and things like self-care that help to have more success in this type of conversations. And in the end, I'm going to give a little gift here. One is a list of books that I think were really great, although I did say that taking classes with Lafayette Morehouse I think is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. I have books and also a list of feelings. This is when I have trouble figuring out how I'm feeling, I can refer to this short list. And there's a very much more comprehensive list over here at the Nonviolent Communication Organization. It's a PDF with a very long list of different ways and subtleties and nuances of feelings that people may be having. Lost my mouse. And here's some books. These are all wonderful books about relating with people. This first one, Wired for Love, it's probably my favorite relationship book. We built a relationship contract after reading Wired for Love. And one of those things is we agree never to scare one another deliberately. Frighten one another deliberately. Among other things, there's like a bunch of tenets. So Wired for Love is a wonderful book about relating with a partner. Redirecting children's behavior really helped me when I was raising my kids. Gave me a very empathic and disciplined way of training them. I love the New Skeet book on the art of raising a puppy. It's pretty similar to the training cycle. You're sort of cushioning and building a relationship with this animal and then giving them small tasks that they can win at. And finally, Crucial Conversations gives you all kinds of ideas about communicating with colleagues. They're not exclusively about working with colleagues. They also do some relationship stuff, but if I was going to read one book from this list about work-related conversations, that would be it. Okay, I'm all done. Yay.